She didn't say it to hurt him. That was the first thing he understood. When the words finally came out, "I am too old for you," there was no cruelty in her voice, no sarcasm, no attempt to push him away through humiliation. It was said the way people speak when they are trying to protect something fragile, including themselves. She had practiced that sentence in her head long before she ever said it out loud. People like her always do. They rehearse goodbyes before beginnings. They calculate endings before allowing hope to take shape, because hope, once allowed, has a way of growing faster than it survives. And she had survived too much already. They met without ceremony. No music, no coincidence worthy of memory. Just two people crossing paths in a place neither of them expected to matter. He noticed her first, not because she was striking, but because she carried herself like someone who had learned to walk through the world without asking it for permission. There was a calm in her movements that didn't come from peace. It came from endurance. He was younger, not reckless, not immature, just open. People who haven't been broken yet don't rush love. They assume time is on their side. They assume presence is enough. She noticed that immediately, and it scared her. At first, she kept things polite, professional, safe. She answered questions without expanding. She smiled without inviting. She shared stories that ended before they reached anything vulnerable. She didn't want to become a memory in someone else's future. She had already lived through being left behind once. He sensed the distance, but instead of closing it, he respected it. That was the first mistake she made, because distance only works when someone is willing to leave it untouched. He wasn't. "You don't have to talk," he told her one evening, sitting beside her but not turning his body toward hers. "I just like being here." She laughed quietly. "That will change," she said, not as a threat, as experience, but it didn't change. Days passed, then weeks. He kept showing up. Not with grand gestures, not with promises, just with consistency. And consistency is dangerous when someone has learned to expect disappearance. She began noticing small things. The way he listened without waiting to speak. The way he didn't rush silence. The way he never asked her age directly, as if he already understood the answer carried weight. That restraint made her uneasy. People usually wanted something. He seemed content just to stay. One afternoon she asked him why, not challengingly, curiously. "Why are you still here?" she said. He didn't answer immediately. That pause mattered. "I don't know," he said finally. "I just feel calmer when I'm near you." That was the moment she knew she was in trouble, because calm doesn't announce itself loudly. It settles, and once it settles, removing it feels like loss. She began telling him pieces of her past. Never the full story, just fragments. A marriage that ended quietly, but left deep damage. Dreams postponed until they lost their urgency. A body that felt older than the calendar suggested. He listened, not with pity, with respect. And that terrified her more than judged ever could. She had expected curiosity. She hadn't expected acceptance. That night, alone, she stared at her reflection longer than usual. She noticed things she had learned not to see. The lines around her eyes, the heaviness in her shoulders, the exhaustion that never fully left. She thought of him, and for the first time in years, she felt something dangerous. Desire. Not for youth, for presence. She decided then that she needed to stop this before it went any further, before attachment made the ending worse, before hope remembered how to hurt. That was when she said it. "I'm too old for you." She expected him to smile politely, to reassure her, to disagree gently and then fade. That's how these things usually ended. He didn't. He stayed quiet for a long time. Then he looked at her, not like someone arguing, but like someone deciding whether to lose something important. "I'm not afraid of your years," he said slowly. "I'm afraid of a life where you're not in it." She turned away, because if she looked at him, she might believe him. And belief had ruined her before. She didn't push him away because of his age. That was just the explanation she could say out loud. What she never said, not to him, not to herself, was that she had learned something dangerous long before they met. Love doesn't leave loudly, it leaves slowly. And by the time you realize it's gone, you're already rearranging your life around the absence. Her first marriage hadn't ended in betrayal. That would have been easier. It ended in erosion. Small disappointments, unkept promises, dreams postponed for later until later stopped arriving. She'd been young then, hopeful, certain that patience was the same as strength. It wasn't. It was silence disguised as loyalty. She remembered the moment she understood it was over. Not the argument, not the door closing. The quiet realization that she was alone even when someone was sitting beside her. That realization never left her. It followed her into every relationship after. So she learned to manage expectations early, to recognize attachment before it became dependence, to step back before someone decided to step away for her. Leaving first feels like control. Staying too long feels like humiliation. When she met him, all of that knowledge activated at once. Not as panic, as instinct. She saw how easily he laughed, how freely he imagined future moments, how naturally he assumed presence could be permanent. People like that didn't understand how fragile connection really was. She didn't want to be the one who taught him. He noticed her hesitation, but misread it. He thought she was cautious. He didn't realize she was experienced. Experience doesn't announce itself. It withdraws. She set rules for herself. No plans too far ahead. No promises spoken out loud. No future tense language. She talked about days, not years. Moments, not commitments. That way, when it ended, she could say she had never expected more. But he disrupted that structure without trying. Not by demanding closeness, by offering steadiness. He didn't disappear after difficult conversations. He didn't withdraw when she grew quiet. He didn't punish her distance. That consistency unsettled her more than absence ever had. One night, she asked him a question she had asked every man she had ever loved. "What happens when you get tired of this?" He looked genuinely confused. "Tired of what?" "Of me," she replied. The answer came too quickly for him to have rehearsed it. "I don't feel tired," he said. "I feel present." That word echoed in her mind long after he left. Present. Not hopeful. Not romantic. Present. Presence had always been temporary in her life. She didn't know how to trust it. She began noticing how often she anticipated loss, how she braced for disappointment, even during calm moments, how she prepared explanations for endings that hadn't happened yet. A fear, she realized, had become her companion, a quiet one, a convincing one. He didn't try to rescue her from that fear. He didn't challenge it directly. He simply didn't obey it. When she pulled back, he stayed. When she grew quiet, he listened. When she said this won't last, he didn't argue. He just replied, "I'm here today." That frightened her, because today is how things begin to matter. One evening, she stood alone in her kitchen, staring at the reflection in the dark window. She saw two versions of herself overlapping. The woman who had survived heartbreak by becoming careful, and the woman who was slowly, quietly falling in love again. She didn't know which one would survive this time. So she did what she had always done when fear and hope collided. She tried to end it cleanly. She told him again that she was too old, that their timelines didn't align, that he deserved someone who could grow with him without limits. He listened. Then he said something that changed the shape of everything. "I'm not trying to grow past you," he said. "I'm trying to grow with you." That sentence stayed with her, because it didn't deny reality. It accepted it. And acceptance is harder to fight than optimism. She didn't say yes. She didn't say no. She said nothing. And for the first time, silence didn't feel like retreat. It felt like hesitation. Age is rarely the first thing people see. It's what they notice after they start comparing. Before comparison, there is only presence. And presence, when it's honest, confuses the rules people think they understand. At first, no one said anything. Friends noticed the difference, of course. They always do. But they spoke in glances, not words. Curiosity wrapped itself in politeness. Questions were saved for later, when they could be disguised as concern. She felt it immediately. The way conversations paused for a fraction of a second when he joined her. The way smiles lingered too long. The way people tried to calculate something they didn't understand. She had lived long enough to recognize judgment, pretending to be interest. He noticed it too, but it didn't land the same way. He had grown up in a world where time felt abundant, where the future was something you planned for, not something you guarded. When people looked at them strangely, he assumed they would adjust. She knew better. People don't adjust, they categorize. She became aware of her body in ways she hadn't been in years. Not vanity, awareness. The way she stood next to him in public. The way her hand hesitated before reaching for his. The way she measured whether affection would be read as intimacy or as something inappropriate. A woman learns early that visibility comes with rules. An older woman learns them again. He never commented on her age. Not once, not directly, not indirectly. That silence wasn't avoidance, it was respect. But respect, she knew, didn't protect you from the world. One afternoon, someone finally said it out loud. Not cruelly, not loudly. Just casually enough to hurt. "You know, people are talking," a friend told her, as if offering useful information. She nodded. "I know," she replied. The conversation ended there. It always did. That night she asked him something she'd been holding back. "Does it bother you?" she said. He didn't ask what she meant. "No," he answered immediately. "That people notice." "That they measure," she clarified. He thought for a moment. "People measure everything," he said. "They measure success, happiness, time. I don't think we're special." She wanted to believe him. But belief requires more than logic, it requires safety. She had learned that love, when observed, becomes performance. And she didn't want to perform youth. She didn't want to apologize for the years she had survived. She told him about the mornings when her body felt heavier, about the nights when sleep came slower, about the quiet fear that one day he would wake up and realize she represented a future that felt limited. She didn't dramatize it. She stated it. Facts hurt more than fears. He listened carefully, and then he said something unexpected. "I don't love you for who you'll become," he said. "I love you for who you are when you're here with me." That unsettled her, because it removed the future from the argument, and the future had always been her shield. They began living more quietly, not hiding, choosing. They avoided crowded places. They preferred long walks to loud rooms. They learned how to exist without inviting commentary. This wasn't retreat, it was preservation. Time passed differently for them. Days felt full, weeks felt fast, years felt strangely neutral. She didn't feel herself aging next to him. She felt herself stabilizing. But stability carries its own fear. Because when something finally feels good, the thought of losing it sharpens. She began noticing how often she watched him while he wasn't looking, how she memorized moments, how she stored memories in advance just in case. Preparation disguised as appreciation. One evening, while they sat quietly, she asked him a question she hadn't meant to ask. "What if one day you want something I can't give?" He didn't answer right away. Not because he didn't care, because he cared enough to think. "I already have what I want," he said finally. "I'm just choosing to stay with it." That should have comforted her. Instead, it frightened her, because staying is a choice, and choices can be reversed. She realized then that age wasn't the real distance between them. Certainty was. He lived as if time would adapt. She lived as if time would collect. Both were right. And that difference mattered. Love is easiest when no one is watching. It survives in silence, in routine, in the ordinary moments that never need defending. The problem begins when it becomes visible. They didn't announce themselves. They didn't post pictures. They didn't explain. But time has a way of revealing what people try to keep gentle. Eventually, others noticed that he was always there, that he didn't drift, that he didn't replace her with something easier. Questions started arriving disguised as concern, from friends, from family, from people who believed intimacy required permission. "Have you thought about the future? Aren't you worried about resentment? Don't you want someone who can grow with you?" The questions were never asked to her directly. They were asked around her, as if she were a risk factor instead of a person. He heard them. He listened. He didn't defend himself loudly. That restraint confused people. They expected rebellion or justification. They got neither. She felt the shift more sharply, not in conversations, in invitations that stopped coming, in pauses that lingered, in the way people adjusted their language when she entered the room. She had crossed an invisible boundary, not because of who she was, but because of what she represented. Age, when attached to love, unsettles people. It reminds them that time is uneven, that fairness isn't guaranteed. That desire doesn't follow rules. She started pulling back again, not from him, from the world. She didn't want him defending her. She didn't want explanation to delivered on her behalf. She had learned long ago that being defended can feel like being exposed. One night, she said something she'd been holding for weeks. "I don't want to be something you have to justify." He looked at her carefully. "You're not," he replied. She shook her head. "I am. Just not to you." That distinction sat heavily between them, because both statements were true. The pressure didn't break them immediately. It wore them down, slowly, like water against stone. He began noticing the toll it took on her. The way she hesitated before holding his hand in public. The way she scanned rooms unconsciously. the way she withdrew after gatherings, exhausted by attention she hadn't asked for. Love had not become unsafe. Visibility had. One afternoon, someone finally crossed a line. Not maliciously, honestly. "You know this can't last forever," they said to him. He asked why. They hesitated. "You'll want more," they answered. That assumption offended him more than judgment ever could. That night he told her what had been said. Not to alarm her, to be transparent. She listened quietly. Then she said something that surprised him. "They're right," she said. "Not as agreement. As fear." She explained what she had never fully admitted. That she worried about becoming an anchor instead of a companion. That she feared love turning into obligation. That she didn't want to be the reason he stayed smaller than he could have been. He didn't interrupt. He didn't reassure. He waited until she finished. Then he spoke. "I don't feel smaller with you," he said. "I feel grounded." That word again, grounded. She realized then that they were speaking different emotional languages. He spoke of presence. She spoke of protection. Both came from love. Both pointed in different directions. The tension didn't resolve that night. It deepened, because love, when forced to explain itself, begins to fracture. Not from lack of feeling, from too much awareness. She began considering something she hadn't allowed herself to consider before. Leaving, not because she wanted to, because she believes she should. She told herself she was being responsible, mature, realistic. Those words sounded convincing. They always do when fear is involved. But late at night, alone, she asked herself a question she avoided during the day. What if this wasn't protecting him? What if it was protecting her from being hurt again? She didn't know the answer. An uncertainty, she had learned, was more frightening than loneliness. She didn't decide to leave him in a moment of anger. That would have been easier. Anger gives permission. Anger justifies distance. This decision came quietly, carefully, like something she'd rehearsed for years without knowing when she would finally use it. She noticed the moment the thought stopped feeling hypothetical. It was an ordinary morning, nothing dramatic. They sat across from each other in silence, drinking coffee, sharing the kind of quiet that once felt safe. She watched him fold his hands, the ease in his movements, the way he existed in the present without bracing for impact, and something inside her tightened. She realized then that she was no longer protecting him from pain. She was protecting herself from the possibility of losing him later. That distinction mattered. She had always believed that leaving first was strength, that walking away before love could turn into grief was wisdom. But this time, the choice felt heavier. Because this time, love had been gentle. She didn't tell him immediately. She carried the decision alone for days. That was her way. She needed certainty before she allowed words to exist. During those days, she noticed everything. The way he waited for her to finish speaking, the way he adjusted his pace to match hers, the way he never asked her to promise anything. Those details made the decision harder, not easier. One night, she lay awake while he slept beside her. She studied his face in the dark, not memorizing it, preparing herself to let it go. She thought about time, about how unfair it is, how it gives abundance to some and scarcity to others. She thought about the years she had already lived, and the years he still assumed were endless. She imagined him 10 years from now, still kind, still open, still capable of beginning again. And she imagined herself watching from a distance. That image broke something in her. She told herself she was being responsible, that love, if it mattered, should also be reasonable. But love has never been reasonable. That's why people fear it. The next evening, she asked him to sit with her. Her voice was steady. Too steady. He noticed that immediately. She didn't blame him. She didn't mention age. She didn't repeat old arguments. She spoke plainly. "I don't want to become something you have to defend," she said. "I don't want to be the reason you explain your life to others." He listened, not interrupting, not bargaining. He had learned her rhythms. He knew this wasn't a conversation, it was a statement. "I love you," she continued. "And that's why I can't stay." The sentence hurt her as much as it hurt him. But pain, she had learned, doesn't always mean wrong. Sometimes it means final. He didn't argue. That was what destroyed her. If he had begged, she could have resisted. If he had promised, she could have dismissed it. But he didn't. He respected her choice. And respect, when you want to stay, feels like loss. He asked only one question. "Is this what you want?" She hesitated. That hesitation lasted longer than she expected. "Yes," she said finally. The word tasted like betrayal, but she said it anyway. They didn't fight. They didn't raise voices. They sat in silence afterward, letting reality settle into the space between them. Love doesn't always end with conflict. Sometimes it ends with agreement, and agreement can be devastating. She packed slowly, not because she needed time, because she needed to feel each moment leave. He helped her carry things to the door. That kindness hurt more than cruelty ever could. At the door she stopped, not to reconsider, to breathe. He stood in front of her, not blocking, present. "I don't regret loving you," he said. Neither did she. That was the tragedy. She left without looking back, because looking back would have undone her. That night, alone, she felt something she hadn't expected. Not relief, not peace, emptiness. She had chosen safety over hope, control over uncertainty. And while the decision made sense, it didn't feel like freedom. Time doesn't rush to fill the space love leaves behind. It lets the emptiness settle first. The days after she left didn't feel dramatic. They felt wrong, as if something essential had been removed from the rhythm of his life. But the rhythm itself hadn't been informed. He woke up at the same hour, drank coffee the same way, moved through rooms that still remembered her. Absence is loudest when routine continues. At first he told himself this was temporary, not the separation, the feeling. People always believe pain has a schedule, that grief arrives, peaks, and then politely exits. This kind didn't. It stayed flat, constant, like pressure. He noticed it in small moments, reaching for his phone and stopping halfway, turning to speak and remembering there was no one to listen. Cooking too much food without realizing why. Love leaves habits behind. Habits don't know how to leave. He didn't chase her, not because he didn't want to, because he understood her too well. Chasing would have turned love into negotiation, and she had never negotiated her boundaries. He replayed the last conversation endlessly, not searching for a different ending, searching for proof that he had misunderstood. He hadn't. That was the cruelest part. She had left not because she didn't love him, but because she did. And love, when mixed with fear, makes decisions that logic can't undo. She felt the absence differently, not as emptiness, as noise. Her life became louder after he was gone. Not socially, internally. Her thoughts returned in full volume. The protective silence she had built around herself collapsed. Love had been quiet. Its absence wasn't. She tried to tell herself she felt lighter, more in control, more aligned with reality. But control doesn't feel like peace, it feels like vigilance. She avoided places they had shared, not out of nostalgia, out of survival. She knew how memory worked. It didn't arrive gently, it ambushed. She kept busy. That was her instinct. Fill time before time fills you. But late at night, when activity stopped working, she noticed something unsettling. She missed being seen, not admired, understood. He had never tried to fix her, never tried to make her younger, never tried to make her easier. He had simply stayed, and now staying was the thing she missed most. Weeks passed, then months, not evenly. Some days felt neutral, others felt sharp without warning. Grief doesn't move forward, it circles. Friends tried to help. They suggested distraction. They suggested logic. They reminded her why the decision made sense. She agreed with all of it. That didn't make the nights quieter. He changed slowly. Not externally, internally. He became less open, not closed, measured. Love hadn't made him reckless, but losing it had taught him caution. He stopped assuming presence was guaranteed, stopped believing that wanting something was enough to keep it. That shift aged him more than time ever could. She began noticing the opposite change in herself. She softened, not toward him, toward uncertainty. She realized that the pain she had been avoiding wasn't worse than the loneliness she had chosen. That realization frightened her, because it meant the decision might not have been the solution she believed it was. One evening, alone, she admitted something she hadn't allowed herself to admit before. She hadn't left because of age. She had left because she didn't trust happiness to stay, and trusting happiness felt more dangerous than losing it. That honesty didn't bring relief, but it brought clarity, and clarity, once present, demands response. Neither of them reached out, not because they didn't want to, because silence had become part of the agreement. Breaking it felt like betrayal. They lived parallel lives, separate, connected only by memory, and memory is a demanding companion. He wondered if love could survive being respected too much. She wondered if protection had cost her something irreplaceable. Neither of them had answers. Waiting feels neutral only at the beginning. Over time, it demands something. For months, neither of them crossed the line they had silently drawn. Not out of pride, out of respect. Respect, when prolonged, can become distance. And distance, when left untouched, hardens into permanence. He noticed the shift first, not as pain, as resignation. The thought of her still hurt, but it no longer startled him. It had found its place. That scared him more than heartbreak ever had. He realized that if he didn't act soon, love would not disappear dramatically. It would dissolve, quietly, like something forgotten on a shelf. She felt the shift differently, as tension, as pressure, as the sense that something unfinished was beginning to close on its own. She had believed that time would validate her choice. Instead, time kept asking questions. She noticed how often she caught herself imagining him not returning, not waiting, not hoping, just gone. That possibility felt heavier than regret. One afternoon she stood in a familiar place they used to visit together. Not intentionally. Habit brought her there. She sat alone, watching people pass, and understood something painful. She wasn't protecting him anymore. She was protecting the version of herself that didn't risk hope. Hope had never been gentle with her, but neither had fear. That night she didn't sleep. Not because of sadness, because of clarity, the kind that doesn't allow postponement. He was sitting at home, reading without absorbing, when he felt it too. The sense that waiting had reached its limit. That silence had done all it could. That respect was beginning to resemble surrender. He thought about reaching out, not to convince, not to plead. To be honest, for the first time, honesty felt less dangerous than silence. She arrived at the decision alone, as she always did. But this time, the decision wasn't about leaving. It was about stopping the retreat, stopping the protection, stopping the assumption that loss was inevitable. She didn't rehearse what she would say. Rehearsal was a form of control. She was tired of control. He drafted a message, deleted it. Drafted another, deleted that too. Words felt insufficient, and yet silence felt dishonest. They reached out on the same day. Not coordinated, not planned, just inevitable. His message was simple. I don't know if you want to hear from me, but I'm still here. Hers arrived minutes later. I think I've been hiding from the wrong thing. Neither of them responded immediately. They needed to breathe. They needed to let the words exist without reacting to them. They met days later, not in private, not in the past, in a neutral place, somewhere new. That mattered. They didn't embrace, they didn't smile. They sat across from each other, careful and present. Time had changed them, not visibly, internally. She spoke first. I was afraid, she said, not apologetically, honestly, of becoming something you outgrew. He didn't interrupt. He listened the way he always had. Then he said something different than before. I'm afraid too, he admitted, of loving something real and watching it fade because no one fought for it. That sentence shifted the ground between them, because it acknowledged something new, mutual risk. They didn't decide anything that day. They didn't promise. They didn't undo the past. They acknowledged the present. And that was enough to change the future. They didn't leave that meeting feeling relieved. Relief belongs to endings. What they felt was weight, the kind that settles in when something real is finally named. They began again carefully, not like before. Before had been hope wrapped in restraint. This time it was honesty without protection, and honesty is heavier. They agreed on nothing except one thing: no pretending, not about age, not about fear, not about time. They would not behave as if love made them immune to reality. Reality would sit with them, at the table, in the room, in the silence. She stopped apologizing for her years, not defiantly, quietly. She spoke of her body without minimizing it, of her energy without comparing it, of her future without pretending it mirrored his. And for the first time, she didn't watch his face while she spoke. She trusted him to stay. He stopped romanticizing endurance. He stopped framing patience as virtue. He understood now that staying without choosing is another form of avoidance. So he chose, again, not dramatically, daily. They didn't merge lives. They aligned them. There is a difference. Merging demands sacrifice. Alignment demands awareness. There were difficult conversations about health, about time, about the inevitabilities neither of them could negotiate. They didn't soften these talks. They respected them. She admitted something she had never said out loud. I was afraid you'd love me, and then resent me. He answered honestly. I was afraid you'd leave before I could decide if I was strong enough to stay. Fear met fear, and didn't retreat. They learned a new rhythm, slower, less reactive, more deliberate. Love didn't feel urgent anymore. It felt intentional. People still noticed. That didn't stop. Judgment never does. But something had changed. They no longer felt responsible for correcting it. Visibility lost its threat. One evening, she stood in front of a mirror and saw herself clearly. Not younger, not older. Present. That presence was unfamiliar. She hadn't lived there in years. He watched her from a distance. Not possessively, gratefully. Love, stripped of illusion, feels less intoxicating. But it lasts longer. They never promised forever. That mattered. Promises assume control over time. They chose honesty instead. Some days were ordinary. Some days were heavy. None were wasted. She realized something quietly, months later. She wasn't afraid of being left anymore. Not because he couldn't leave, but because she no longer abandoned herself to prevent it. He realized something too. Love wasn't about waiting endlessly. It was about standing fully where you are. They didn't get a story people envy. They got a story people don't understand. And that was enough.